Great, Mayor. Thanks. Everything's been going smooth and busy.
Good. I understand the 4th of July was wonderful on the park.
Yeah, I heard it was great.
Good. My accent is getting worse and worse the more back here.
Just heard it. We could just hear it when you said park, except it was not park.
We take the R's out of words that have R's in them, and we put R's in words that don't have them in it.
Yeah.
It's a ka and it's an idea.
Okay. So this is just another reminder to those people who have joined the meeting to please keep your device muted during the meeting until the mayor calls on you. This way there's no any background noise that may come over during other parts of the meeting. And if you want to raise your hand at a time when the mayor calls for public comment, please use the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen.
With that caveat, Britt, my watch says it's about 7:30 your time. So, my time, 4:30 your time. Am I correct?
Sir. Yes, sir.
So why don't I call in order then the Carmel-by-the-Sea City Council regular meeting for July 6th, 2021. Can we get a roll call, please, Britt?
Councilmember Barron.
Here.
Ferlito.
Here.
Tice.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards.
Here.
Mayor Potter.
Yeah.
All right, we have a quorum.
That noted, when I did say regular meeting, I meant that it's regular and then we're all together. I happen to be, though, about 2,500 miles away in the apartment in my hometown of Hingham, Massachusetts. So it's probably the most intimate look some of you will ever get in my apartment. But it is great to be back here, and I want to appreciate the fact we're able to still conduct this meeting through contemporary technology. So extraordinary business. We do have one item that's welcoming an inclusive community proclamation. Karen Ferlito, you've spent a lot of time working on this. I really appreciate that. If you'd like to introduce it and then read it, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I would be honored to do so.
Karen, could you speak up a little bit?
Pardon me?
Yeah, if you could speak up just a little bit.
Okay. At our recent strategic planning meeting, I was tasked by Mayor Potter with writing this proclamation, and a resident, Carol McKibben, a Stanford historian, author, and lecturer, volunteered to assist me. Two of Carol's students, both seniors at Stanford, worked with us on the proclamation. We researched similar documents adopted by other communities, the United Nations, and other entities in our quest to write a broad-based, values-centered document. The proclamation before you came about due to violent and hateful acts perpetrated against many innocent people across the United States in the recent few months, and unfortunately, some of those incidents continue today. Recent news articles just this past week report that California had an unprecedented rise in these types of hateful acts. Hate crimes overall are up by 31% in the state last year, with hate crimes against Asians up by 107%. Hate crimes against Black people increased by 88%, and anti-Latino crimes rose 38%. Hateful rhetoric, actual physical violence, and display of hateful images do not make for a welcoming community or a safe one. Carmel-by-the-Sea has been largely spared from any of this. We've had no violent incidents, but the City Council desired to make a statement containing certain core values and affirm our village as a welcoming and safe community for our residents, our staff, our hospitality workers, and our visitors. As a national and international destination, we want to make sure we are living and sharing our values, and this proclamation is an affirmation of those values. So I will now read the proclamation. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea, reaffirming our community's ethos as a welcoming and inclusive community for all. Whereas all people shall be respected and valued, and whereas a welcoming community accepts all persons regardless of ethnicity, race, age, sexual orientation, religion, disability, gender, and gender identity. And whereas Carmel-by-the-Sea has been and will continue to be enriched and enhanced in its cultural fabric, economic prosperity, and personal understanding of others by having a principled and respectful community standard towards all people. And whereas Carmel-by-the-Sea endeavors to have all residents and visitors be safe and secure, and whereas the betterment of our community is assured when we welcome all persons to partake in the social, cultural, and economic elements of Carmel-by-the-Sea, and whereas understanding and collaboration between people is vital for the cultivation of a community that is accepting of all persons. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, on behalf of Dave Potter, Mayor of City of Carmel-by-the-Sea, and on behalf of the entire City Council and citizens of Carmel, hereby proclaim the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea does A, encourage its citizens, businesses, civic groups, municipal government, and community institutions to strive to make the community even stronger in its acceptance of all persons, regardless of ethnicity, race, age, sexual orientation, religion, disability, gender, and gender identity. That Carmel-by-the-Sea does B, strive for unity and harmony in our community. That Carmel-by-the-Sea does respect the human dignity of all persons. And perhaps most importantly, the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea does denounce racism, anti-Semitism, white supremacy, misogyny, anti-Indigenous racism, anti-Muslim bias, anti-Asian Pacific Islander hatred, and LGBTQ+ hate, ableism, xenophobia, all hateful speech, symbols of hatred and bias, and all acts of violence towards all people. Thank you very much.
Karen, thank you for all your efforts on that. I know you put a lot of hard work into it, reached out to a variety of community members. Go ahead and make sure it was appropriately articulating our concerns. So thank you. I know I was asking you to do a lot. You've been very busy, but I do appreciate you doing that. Thank you so much. I know I speak for the entire council when I say that, so thank you.
Thank
Mayor-
you. Was
Mayor
honor.
Potter,
Yes.
Carol McKibben has her hand raised if you wanted to take some public comment on this item.
Given the broad nature of this, normally we don't, but I will given the nature of this. Carol? You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes, figure that out. Thank you, Mayor Potter, and really thank you, Karen, for all of your support and hard work. It's appreciated, but also for acting. And with all due respect, Carmel has not been spared. This was triggered because I noted a Confederate flag flying in Carmel, which deeply, deeply offended me. And it's part of this new uptick in discourse in this country that Karen referred to, symbolic and otherwise. And the flag, of course, is symbolic, that normalizes hate. There's something on my screen that looks odd, but anyway, it normalizes white supremacy and exclusions of every kind. So these symbols, such as the flying of the Confederate flag, but also the language and discourse that Karen described against people of color generally, the LGBTQ community, religious minorities, these are like cancer. And they're not benign. They're not something that we should ever ignore. The action is important. This proclamation is important. If we ignore them, then they metastasize. And we saw evidence over and over again of that in our history. The most extreme example, of course, is during the Nazi era, in Germany, the Holocaust began in a very, very small, kind of innocuous way. So good people like you all, like all of us, every one of us, we need to confront and confound all of these symbols of hate. You can't ask someone to take down a Confederate flag, right? I would defend the First Amendment vigorously like any of us would. But we do need to stand out loud and clear against these vicious divisive views, even louder than they proclaim them. We are for the Constitution, not the Confederacy. We're for inclusion and equality and diversity, not racial hierarchy, on which the Confederacy was founded. That was as much of a lie, racial hierarchy, as the Nazis used to justify the slaughter of 6 million Jews. So we need to stop it in its tracks and step up and call it out loudly and clearly as a community. We just don't support something like this. And I'm really, really grateful to you and to Karen for making this an official document. It's not just welcoming, it's standing out against hate speech and symbols of hate. And the Confederate flag is absolutely one of them. Thank you for hearing me out here. I know it's not the usual, but I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Carol. And I did that because you were the impetus for this happening, so I appreciate that.
I appreciate that.
All right, that noted, we'll move on then to announcements. City Administrator Chip, what do you got going on?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, did you want to go to me or go to public appearances first?
I'm
sir?
sorry, you're right. I did mean to go to public appearances, my mistake. So is there anybody wishing to speak tonight on an item that is not on tonight's agenda? If so, it's a 3-minute limitation on testimony. Please raise your hand and indicate that you'd like to speak.
Star 6 will unmute your device. Star 9 will raise your hand if you're attending via phone. The reactions tab on the bottom of your screen is how you can raise your hand. And let's see, Brian Andrus.
No, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, hello. I'd just like to reach out to the city to let them know that Carmel Post number 512, the American Legion, located on Dolores, has been growing its community involvement. We just helped with a one-day stand down for homeless vets with the assistance of doctors, lawyers, community organizations, and tireless volunteers. 114 veterans were provided food, clothing, legal advice, and even dental. We were able to provide COVID-19 vaccines as well. We look forward to working with the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea with future events. We've been trying to get involved with the farmers market and the 4th of July. We've been doing that for the past couple of years. We really appreciate all the feedback. We'd also like to express interest in helping with the Boy Scout house to ensure it is preserved and maintained. So please keep us in mind for any endeavors involving it. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Brian, thank you for your testimony and all your efforts with all your veterans. We appreciate that. Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight? Britt, you're the gatekeeper.
Mayor, I think we're good. Nobody else has raised their hand, even when Mr. Andrus was speaking.
All
righty. So then now we can move on to Chip's report. Chip?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we will reach out to Mr. Andrus and Legion Post 512. Just one minor correction. Ms. Wright would ensure that I'd correct. The Scout House was originally built for the Girl Scouts of Carmel. It's not a Boy Scout hut. It's a Scout House, and the council is looking at some planning initiatives. And I'll reach out to again the commander at the post, and we can talk about where we are and where we hope they're going. A shout out to Mayor White, and again, Ashley Wright, Leslie Fenton, and their team who put on a wonderful Independence Day celebration on the 4th. Thank you to Monterey County Pops for coming. It was a wonderful event, well attended. I spoke with Councilmember Ferlito, well attended, a great crowd, really well behaved. And it just might, I haven't spoken with Ms. Wright yet, but maybe it forms the backbone for a kind of a revised Independence Day celebration in the future. So thanks to everyone who took part and who attended. And then just one more note, Mr. Mayor, we are planning on coming back in person, opening our chambers for in-person meetings in September. That is the goal. Councilmember Richards has me looking at whether we could get back a little bit earlier. There is some technology that we have to build into our existing system, so I'm not sure we're going to be able to get back prior to September, but September will be the latest that we're back for in-person council meetings. We will still have a Zoom present, so people who would not like to come to the chambers in person can continue to watch and observe and speak in a video-like format that we're in currently. And of course, all our boards and commissions will be asked to return in person in our chamber as of September 1st as well. So that's what I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chip. I appreciate that. Any council members concerns with Chip's report? I don't see any. All right, Brian, do you have anything worthwhile reporting out of the city attorney's office?
Well, I guess that's a matter of opinion, but no, I have no items tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Council members' comments or announcements. Council members, anybody have anything they'd like to impart to the public? Karen, then Jeff, then Chip, then Bobby. Karen?
Yes, I'd just like to thank Bob Harari, Chief Panholzer, and Chief Tomasi for a wonderful emergency update up at the Forest Theater. It was really nice to get together and to be reassured about how prepared they are. And I want to thank them publicly for that nice presentation. And also, yes, I was going to say it was a really nice 4th of July concert in the park. It was very well attended and nice, diverse crowd, and just really a nice day. So thank you.
Excellent, Karen. Thank you. Jeff, I think you were next, then Bobby.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. As usual, I'd like to announce this month's Climate Change Committee meeting. This month, we're really early. The third Thursday is July 15th at 3:30. We'll be talking about our work plan to make sure we finish on time next September. We'll be talking about the vulnerability assessment that we've been working on for a year and a half with a little bit of an absence because of COVID. All the things that will probably go wrong around town over the course of the next 50 or so years. We'll be talking about the Regional Waste Management District and our greenhouse gas inventories, or at least where we think we are. And we'll talk about setting up some subcommittees. So we look forward to seeing everybody on July 15th.
Thank you, Jeff. Bobby?
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate Sarah Greasley, who is the CCS newest pole vault champion, who also went on to take 5th in state at Carmel High. So congratulations, Sarah.
Duly noted. Well said. Carrie, did you have anything? All right. Well, I just wanted to say, Jeff, to your climate change group and everything, back here, the climate is unbelievably bizarre. We got here, it was literally, we flew in, it was in the high 90s. The thunderstorm blew through, it dropped into the 60s. Then it's climbed up again to 80, 90, into the 90s. Another thunderstorm has come through. We've had 5 inches of rain here since the end of June. 5 inches of rain, which we haven't seen the likes of in Carmel in ages. It's just incredible what's going on here as far as the fluctuation of temperatures go. So the net zero crowd that I think maybe some of you saw my photo of when I was here last time in April, they actually asked me to be in the parade back here. Unfortunately, I was unable to make it. I don't actually like to be in parades. I'd rather watch the parade than be in it, but it was hysterical. They have a very powerful group back here. They've got a lot of support. I want to thank you and Carrie for the work you've done. I do appreciate it. That said, I have no other comments. I think the council's opined. Let's move on then to consent calendar. So there's 9 items on the consent calendar. Is there anybody on council wishing to pull an item?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes,
Jeff?
numbers 6 and 7, please.
6 and 7 for comment or direction?
Direction.
All right.
Direction, please.
Karen, did you have something?
Yes, I'd like to comment on number 2, also 6, 5 a comment, and 8 a question. I'm sorry, but I do have some questions today.
Good. So you wanted to comment on 2 and 5, is that right?
Yes, just a second.
So why don't we get those comments taken care of? Wait a minute, let me go. Carrie, did you have anything you wanted to pull? Bobby? Right. Okay, so Karen, if you wanted to comment on 2 and 5, perhaps we can leave those on the consent calendar. Your comments on 2 first.
On 2, I'm discouraged by the number of illegal fires at the beach, and I've asked for a counting of how many illegal fires we've had this year so far. I think we need to look at improved signage at a few places. but that is disturbing. We're losing ground on our nice, clean white beach, and our staff is really having to go a long way to clean up some of that charcoal. Some of it is impossible to clean up. The other thing I wanted to comment on was in the Public Works report.
Karen, I'm sorry, but could you speak up a little bit? I'm having a problem hearing you. I don't know if anybody else is.
What's
Could
going
anybody
on
else?
today? The other comment I had was on the Public Works report. We've removed 80 some trees this year, and there's only, I think, about 20 some that have been required to be replanted. So I have great concern that we are really losing our forest and perhaps need to step up some of the required plantings, and then also the plantings on public property to make up for that. And then number 5, I just wanted to thank Agnes Martelette for the wonderful job she did on the California State Coastal Conservancy grant, and I hope to see that starting soon. That will do with some good fire fuel abatement. So that was my comment on that. And then on number 8, I wanted to ask just a question. It seemed like for being closed all last year, over $7,000 or around $7,000 of cleaning for Vista Lobos bathrooms. I don't know. Maybe I should get a second job or something. That seems like a lot of money for that. That was just a comment I made. And then, of course, I'd like to discuss the Peninsula Mail Service.
So, Bob, did you want to comment on the cleaning aspect, or Chip, would you like to comment on that?
I'll ask Bob to comment on the restroom cleaning, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Actually, it's a reduced rate because of COVID. PureServe reduced their fees by 14%. They have to attend these bathrooms with or without a lot of use, because you never know when they're going to get dirty. So that 7,000 is real, and it was in fact a better than average price.
All right, well, that's a response to your question, Karen. So is there anything else, Karen? So 2, 3, and 8, are you're content with either those comments or your comments being left unconsent?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have one minor correction on number 5. It's a ledger number, so it's an account number. There's a typo. The correct ledger number is 101-119-43-42001. So Britt and Agnes alerted me to that. So just very minor correction in the ledger number to get it in the correct account. So we'll make that change, Mr. Mayor.
All righty. That noted. I don't think any of us would have noted that. So thank you for your clarification, Chip. So Jeff, you had pulled 6 and 7, I believe. So let me just see. Given the fact that 6 and 7 are possible action items, is there a motion then to approve the balance of consent without the inclusion of 6 and 7?
I'll make that motion to approve consent with the exception of 6 and 7.
All righty. Do you have a second?
I'll second that, Dave, unless you want to take it out to the public to see if they want to pull anything.
Probably. Well, okay. You're right. I should. Yeah. So is there anybody in the public wishing to pull an item from consent?
Again, this is the time that you would unmute your device. *6 on your phone. *9 will raise your hand on your phone. I do see a phone number. Might be Sue McLeod. Not sure if she's wanting to speak on the consent or not.
Yes, that was number 7.
Okay. Did you want to speak?
The 7's coming up, so no. This is on 1
Anything
through,
but, though.
yeah, anything but 6 and 7.
Mayor, I think we're probably good.
See no one. Carrie, thank you for that clarification. All right. So we have a motion. We have a second. Is there any other discussion? All right. Britt, can we have a roll call in?
Councilmember Barron,
Yes.
Ferlito,
Yes.
Tice,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Potter,
Aye.
All right, it passes with 5 yes votes.
So that brings us to items number 6 and 7. Jeff, would you like to set the stage for those?
Sure. Should we just take item number 6 first?
That'd be best.
Okay, item number 6 is the Peninsula Messenger Service, the mail delivery. Hi Sharon, good to see you. Before we have public comment and a discussion, I do have one question. I'm looking at the page 74 in the packet, which is the fee scenarios, and those just happen to be some numbers. So to use the left-hand column, with 145 accounts. So let's say when we institute so my assumption here as I ask this question is that when we go to the system where we have asked people to provide sort of proof that they're allowed for service as the council has directed, coming up in a month or two, let's say that we have 145 people that have the service. Okay, and I'm looking at the 50% number, which would mean that 73 people of the 145 we pay for, and 72 pay for it on their own. Do we pay the Peninsula Messenger Service $84 a month for the 73 people that we pay for, or do we pay Peninsula Messenger Service $45 a month because there are 145 people that are receiving their mail at home? So how, I'm struggling a little bit with, what the fee, so in the situation I gave you, which is 145 people and 73 are eligible, how much are we paying Peninsula Messenger Service, and how much is Peninsula Messenger Service receiving from the other 72 people? Does that question make sense?
It does, council member, and to clarify, those rates would be in totality. So it would be the number of accounts that would include the city, as well as any residents that would sign up directly with Peninsula Messenger Service. So for the illustration in the staff report, the higher dollar amount for less customers was used just so you could see what the city could potentially pay out of its pocket, but the city would pay the same rates as the number of residents. So again, if in totality there were, say, 100 people using the service, the city would pay the rate for 100. If that helps clarify.
Let me rephrase my question using a round number so the math is easy.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry, press the wrong button. Let's say that there are 200 people that have signed up for this service, 100 of which the city pays for, and 100 of which pay for it out of their own pocket. Is it $45 a person for our 100 and the other 100 as well?
That is correct. There would be
out of pocket $4,500, and the other 100 people are also each out of pocket $45 a piece.
Correct. Again, so then the base would be the 200, and so the total cost would be $45.
Would be $9,000.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
So, and if I might just add on to that, so this is basically a hypothetical, and those numbers come back scrubbed on actually who is asking for the services. So that's why the graph is helpful.
That is correct, Mayor. It's just a hypothetical that with the new sliding scale, the lower volume has a higher rate, but the number of total volume is to be determined.
Are there any other questions about Sharon by council members until I take this out to the public? Karen?
Yes. Sharon, have you had any people contact you about dropping off the service previous to this time? And also, what is the total cost the city has put out into this program over the many years, please?
At this point, we have sent out letters notifying people of the change in the program. We're receiving forms back. I haven't noted yet any request to discontinue service at this point in time, but we're still right in the process of requesting forms to be provided. So it's a little early to tell how many people may discontinue the service. And based on the data as far back as our financial system goes, since 2013, we've spent just a little bit under 600,000 from 2013 to June of 2021.
Thank you.
Karen, that answered your question?
Yes.
Okay. Before I go back to Jeff, are there any other council members with questions of Sharon? You don't see any, Jeff?
Yeah, to piggyback off of Karen's question, Sharon, what's the deadline for people returning their forms, and what is going to happen after the deadline for people that have not answered the city's call to return the forms? Will they be transferred to the pay service, or will they be cut off?
Council member, we've requested a deadline of August 15th for forms to be returned. If we do not receive either a form back, or we receive a form and staff has determined the resident to be ineligible for free service based on the criteria, then they'll be notified. The resident will be notified, and Peninsula Messenger Service will be notified to discontinue the service as of September 1.
Jeff, are you satisfied with that answer?
Yes, I understand it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody in the public wishing to speak to this item? Looks like there is. So
All right,
if there is somebody in the public that would like to speak, please identify yourself. You have a 3-minute limitation on that testimony.
This is the time to unmute your device. *6 on your phone. *9 will raise your hand. Sue, I know you'd mentioned wanting to speak. Are you there?
I'm waiting for 7.
This is 6. I apologize. I apologize. Sorry, Sue. Sir,
In the interest of full disclosure, Britt, I appreciate that. So if there's no other discussion, do we have a motion to provide direction to staff as per the recommendation?
I do have a little bit of discussion.
All right.
Yes, I would just like to, I sort of took a little bit of a start when I was reading the staff report. The very first line of the background and summary is, the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea does not have house numbers, nor does the community support the use of group or clustered mailboxes. And I think that sort of sidelines the question of whether we should really start in earnest the process of examining whether or not we should move to mail delivery rather than keeping a centralized post office. As someone who renewed my driver's license this past year with some trouble, everybody gets to do that over the course of the next. I know people around town have trouble receiving packages. And I think, as much as I hate to say this, I think it's time for the community to have a conversation. So I think we need to sort of underline these couple sentences. And I think the community needs to have a conversation about whether we should go to, whether we should start the process of figuring out how to have first addresses at people's homes, and then a natural follow-on to that would be mail service to people's homes. I think that this is just, it's with the 9/11 security and technology, it's becoming, we're in a much more difficult environment now than we were 100 or 50 or even 20 years ago. And I think it's time to have that conversation again. So that is my comment.
I appreciate that, Jeff. I had the same concern when it said it was presumptive, but it seemed a little bit presumptive on my part to go ahead and say the community did not support when we said we were going to have a discussion about it. I think it'll be a spirited debate, but it is our responsibility to have those debates. So I had sort of the same concern about that one comment that seemed a little bit premature. but that noted. So Jeff, you were the one who was concerned about this item. Would you like to move the item?
Actually,
Yeah.
I'd like
Karen,
something.
comment. Karen, maybe why don't we see if we can frame this comment around the motion? Jeff, you make us the motion.
Yeah, I would make a motion to adopt resolution 2021-35, authorizing the city administrator to execute amendment number 3 to the agreement with Peninsula Messenger Service for mail delivery for a not to exceed increase of $122,000 for the term of July 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022.
Okay, do we have a second to that?
I'll second it.
Motion second. Okay, under discussion on the motion. Karen?
Yes, I too am troubled by the cost that this has already incurred and will continue to go up. And I also thought that that sentence saying that the community does not support the use of it might have been something in the past, but may have changed significantly over the last couple of years. So I think that I have been getting a lot of feedback that people want deliveries to be more able to happen. Some people can't, you can't even find some houses. And there are people who are in businesses who set up deliveries that are having difficulty setting up deliveries. And I've looked at queued up boxes, the cluster boxes, and they don't have to be ugly. I think we do need a community conversation around this with based on everything Jeff said about the 9/11 security, convenience, and the fact that, the time has come to have that discussion again. I'd also like to make a comment that when I looked at the list of people on the mail delivery list, the list at the time I looked at it was not alphabetized. There were duplicate names like a husband and wife, and I'm wondering if we're being charged for those. There's also delivery to the fire department, to the police department, to City Hall, and I don't know why that has to be on that list. Perhaps that list could be better organized and verified that we are actually not overpaying. Also, I think perhaps if we are stuck with this kind of list, that maybe we should consider not doing mail delivery 5 days a week. There are other options, I think, that need to be discussed. But I think the time has come.
All right, thank you, Karen. That noted. Anybody else with comments? We do have a motion and a second. Britt, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Barron,
Yes.
Ferlito,
Yes.
Tice,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Potter.
Aye.
All right, it passes with 5 yes votes.
That brings us on to item number 7. Jeff, I believe this is an area of your concern.
Yes, thank you again. When I opened my packet this week, I was sort of pleasantly surprised to see this in here and understand that we are starting to make some progress towards a telecommunications ordinance, which, as we all know, is very sorely needed here, and of which I am in great support. When I look around other communities, I see a lot of discord in other communities about the shape of their ordinance and how things work. And I'm concerned here, and I would like to make sure here that we understand, that the council understands and the community understands what the process we're going to use is for sort of developing this ordinance and vetting it through the community. And so I've asked Brandon, I did tell Brandon I was going to ask him this question, and I hope he has an acceptable answer, and I'm pretty sure that he does. And I'm going to look forward to hearing it right now.
Brandon, you've been queued up appropriately. I hope it's acceptable.
Well, I have an answer. That's always a guarantee that I'll have an answer. So I think starting at a higher level, and Brian Pierik here as well can help with me with this answer, but starting at the higher level of what this ordinance is that we're working on right now, we actually have a draft currently from telecom law firm that we've been working on. Really, this focused more on getting our wireless ordinance in line with state and federal regulations. This draft that we have right now that we're working on at the staff level with telecom is not a major policy change or a wholesale rewrite or anything like that. It's really just to get us in line with the state and federal regulations. So that is in draft right now. Our plan for that is to bring it to Planning Commission first for consideration to recommend to the City Council. The ideal would be, one time through the Planning Commission, but if they have a lot of changes, it'll have to go back to them again because it's a land use item. Coming out of the Planning Commission, we would then bring it to the City Council for a first reading, not necessarily a workshop. It would be, their first reading, and then come back for the second reading and adoption. Then, of course, it's 30 days after that would be effective. I hear what you're saying, Councilmember Barron. It sounds like maybe you're looking for more of a larger sort of policy type of ordinance with respect to wireless, but this update that we're working on right now, and I don't know if it, again, Brian can speak to this a little bit more, this contract for the telecom law firm isn't necessarily tied directly to this ordinance that we've been working on. We already have a draft. It's really just to get us in conformity with state and federal regulations. So that hopefully is an acceptable answer for you. It's an answer nonetheless.
Maybe Brian would like to pile on a little bit. Brian?
Yes, I think Brandon has said it well. There is a need to update the city's wireless communications code. And as you know, codes are amended through the adoption of an ordinance. And so we need to get that ordinance into a final form and ready to submit it to the Planning Commission and then later to the council. In addition, the telecom law firm would be able to assist the city not only with regards to that ordinance, but also with respect to proposed installation of wireless facilities within the city, as that is another issue that comes up. It's somewhat separate and apart from the ordinance work. It's basically applying the ordinance to particular circumstances or requests. So this telecom law firm, they practice exclusively telecom law. They're very qualified to do this. They're available to the city to provide legal advice on the telecommunications issues. And it is a common practice for cities to retain firms with specialization in particular areas. And in particular here, it would be the telecom law firm. I should add that the telecom law firm is completely separate from the firm that I work with, which is Williams and Sorensen. There's no relationship of any kind between telecom and the Burke firm. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Brian, for that legal disclaimer. Jeff, were there any other concerns before I take it out to the public?
I'll wait until you take it out of the public.
And I believe there was one member at least to the public who'd like to speak to this item. Fred, am I correct?
Yes, I think Sue, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you,
Sure, I'm going to go ahead and start.
My question has actually been answered by the city attorney because I did not see a comment about the relationship or non-relationship between his firm and the proposed firm. And I have not waded through all of the draft for this second firm, but it would be interesting to have had some list of the types of cases that they've handled and see if any of them sort of fit with what we have in the way of concerns in the village.
All right, Sue, thank you for those comments. We'll bring that back then. Perhaps, Brian, you could answer that, or Chip, or Brandon.
Actually, Trip May from the telecom law firm is on this call or meeting, and if he could be admitted to the meeting or whatever needs to be done to there he is. Okay. So Mr. May, can you please respond to that question about the experience of your firm, types of matters generally that you've handled, and your ability to assist the city with regards to this ordinance?
Certainly. Pardon my lag or pause in my feed. I've been experiencing some breaks, but if you're having trouble, just raise your hand and I'll know to pause. My name is Trip May. I'm the managing partner of telecom law firm. Our firm has been around for the last 15 years, exclusively serving public agencies and private entities who are dealing with the carriers wanting to put infrastructure on their property. On the public agency side, we primarily advise them on the regulatory aspects of how to structure their municipal codes and policies, design guidelines, application processes, things like that, and then represent them in front of the state legislature, federal legislature, and the FCC, trying to promote local authority over zoning matters. We also have a practice that involves one-on-one consultation with cities about individual matters. So when an application comes in, whether we've helped them with their ordinances and policies or not, we help them to navigate the process. What timelines do you have to meet? What are the criteria for your approval? What types of evidence are inbounds or out of bounds? We are here to serve you guys. So we've expanded that into numerous different areas, including things like dig once ordinances, right-of-way encroachment agreements to make sure that people that want to dig up the street put it back the way that they're supposed to put it back. As long as it involves telecommunications infrastructure, we're here to serve you. Also, I think relevant to this discussion, we have represented the League of California Cities, the League of Oregon Cities, the League of Arizona Cities and Towns in pretty much every major FCC rulemaking proceeding to affect local government authority for the last 6-7 years, including 2 cases, one that was just gone up to the Supreme Court and another one that's still pending in front of the Ninth Circuit regarding small wireless facilities and modifications to existing wireless facilities. So that's a little bit about what we do for public agencies. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, is the case at the state Supreme Court or the Supreme Court of the United States?
Well, as of last week, it's actually not in the Supreme Court anymore. They only grant 1% of the petitions that are handed to them, and unfortunately, ours was not one of them. That was involving the FCC's quote small cell order, and it didn't involve your aesthetic authority over wireless facilities. The Ninth Circuit gave you a favorable decision on that point, but they did not give you a favorable decision on the fees for access to your personal property. So that was the subject of a petition for cert to the Supreme Court, and they did not grant it.
Trip, thank you for your qualification summary there. I appreciate that. Unless there's any other questions for the public, I'm going to close the public comment period. Anybody else in the public wishing to speak at this moment?
I don't see anyone else that had raised their hands, Mayor.
All righty, then I'll bring it back to council for decision. Council members, your preference? Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. I have some comments. Sorry?
You said you were holding a comment.
Yeah, I have a sort of a comment related to something that Brandon said earlier. Brandon, you mentioned that you're not anticipating any policy changes, and to me, this seems like an area that's ripe for sort of policy development. The only telecommunications policy I'm aware of that we have basically in the residential district is that telecommunication facilities aren't allowed in the residential district. Past that, we faced a lot of issues when Verizon first came to town, whether we were going to allow Verizon to put their equipment on their own, require them to put them on their own poles, which would be lower than, 10 feet or so lower, rather than piggybacking them on top of electrical poles. We faced the question of whether we were going to require them to underground the power to their poles. We faced the question of whether they were going to, what clearance we needed from trees, because there is a safety zone, at 25 feet above the ground related to trees and tree work and how the city was going to manage that. We faced a policy question related to aesthetics, whether we're allowed to consider that even a tiny little bit. So I'm not sure that saying that there are no policy changes here is really adequate for me, because there's lots of policy development to be done. And it seems like when I look at what, especially what Monterey has been going through with respect to their ordinance, these are the kinds of questions that seem to sort of galvanize the public, in opposition, because the public hasn't been heard. So I would ask that we have a process that I don't know whether the right place to start. I would look to the council for some guidance here. I don't know whether the right place to start is to develop this policy before we, plop an ordinance down in front of the Planning Commission without having done that pre-work and without the public being really aware of sort of, the sort of implicit decisions that have been made. So that's my sort of comment about where we are right now.
And Jeff, I think I certainly understand where you're coming from. I think one of those, one is one or more process, and one is less about, one is also about what's before us tonight, which is hiring this firm. I agree with you that there's a lot of process that goes into there. There may be changes necessary, but right now the question before us is, do we not hire this firm? And I am impressed by the credentials that Tripp showed tonight, or articulated before us tonight. So I appreciate that. Brandon, do you want to comment?
I don't think I have a lot. I definitely heard Councilmember Barron's comment and take it to heart. I think I may have been oversimplifying the no policy implications of doing an ordinance like this. I mean, working with a firm like the telecom law firm, we're going to be updating our ordinance to include all the areas where we can regulate where it's allowed by state and federal law. I mean, that's one of the issues that we run into and all jurisdictions run into is where can you regulate things like aesthetics, like Councilmember Barron said, or trees, neighborhood consistency, height, and things like that. There's certain limitations by state and federal law. So we'll certainly be working with telecom law firm as we work on this ordinance. So I didn't mean to imply that we wouldn't be looking at any policies at all. I meant more that we're not looking at doing, at this point, at least, unless we receive other direction from the council, we're not looking at doing multiple sort of like policy workshops at this point, because it is a pretty tight box that we have from state and federal regulations.
Thank you, Brandon. Are there any questions or comments by council members? Jeff.
Last one, I promise. Brandon, you just made the statement, unless you receive direction from the council. And maybe that's where I'm having the problem, because I'm not sure where you're going to get that direction from the council. I'm not sure that other than this hearing, which is actually why I've pulled this item to see if we can, I take Dave's comments to heart that this is not the subject of this hearing. But when are you anticipating getting that direction from the council, or giving the council the opportunity to give you that direction before you sort of kick off this process with the Planning Commission? That's basically the root of my question.
Thank you. That is a fair question. I think the short answer is, at this point, our schedule is to go to the Planning Commission first with a draft and go through the process there, get their recommendation to the City Council on an ordinance. So that's sort of where I was going with, unless we receive other direction, unless the City Council tells us they'd like us to start at the City Council with a policy workshop before even taking a first draft to the Planning Commission. That's our plan, is to go to Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Council as a land use matter, and then come for the 2 hearings at the City Council for first reading and adoption, unless when it gets to the City Council, there's changes that would kick it out of that first reading, because you can't make substantive changes between a first and second reading for an ordinance.
Jeff, does that answer your question?
Thank you. Well, it answers the question, but I'm not sure. Brandon keeps talking about, unless the council gives him direction, and I think the council may want to give him direction. I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I would like the council to answer that question. I would hope that the council would answer that question, whether we want to give him direction before we kick off the process at the Planning Commission, and then something ends at our door, lands at our door. So that's my ask. And I'll leave it to, I've said what I have to say, and I'll leave it to you, Dave, and my fellow council members to decide whether that's, I don't know what the answer to this question is.
Okay, so Jeff, I'll take that as direction to me as the mayor to go ahead and see what we can do about scheduling the public discussion on that item. I appreciate that. All right, is there any, Carrie?
Well, I guess part of the question here is, what are the changes? If they are very strict in terms of what the feds and the state regulations are, we're not going to have a lot of say in it. So I think part of the issue here is we're not, the council doesn't know the scope of what these changes are. So it's hard for us to know whether we should have some influence or whether it's going to be pretty narrow and we're going to be mainly depending on Mr. May for his direction. So I think I can understand where Jeff's coming from because we really don't know the scope of this.
Right, and that's why the action before us tonight is the hiring of a firm, perhaps has the expertise to guide us through the course here. But I think the discussion's been good. I think council's clear on direction. Karen, are you trying to raise your hand?
Yes, I have a question. So, Mr. May, will part of what you do be to engage the public ahead of time? Because I think what we don't want to do is have the public not know the parameters of what we can and cannot influence or affect, because some of the stuff is outside of what we can do. And the sooner the public understands what we can and cannot control, the better in this conversation.
I think I might be able to assist on that one. And you make a very good point. And certainly the staff report that goes to the Planning Commission, as well as one that goes to the council, will need to not only just provide the ordinance and say, here it is, but go through a very detailed analysis of what the ordinance includes and what the reasons are that the ordinance has those provisions in it in terms of any obligations that would come from the federal or state laws, either legislation or regulations. So I don't think it's our intention to merely say, here's the ordinance and let's just start going through it. There will be a narrative, and I think it's important on this matter as it is in many others, have a narrative in the staff report to provide the information that'll be necessary for the reader to understand why the ordinance reads the way it does.
Thank you, Brian. I think that does clarify the concerns. Okay, is there any other discussion by council? So can we have a motion then to authorize approval of item number 7?
I move that we adopt resolution 2021-036, authorizing the city administrator to sign a legal service agreement with telecom law firm.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second, thank you. All right, is there any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Britt, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Barron,
Yes.
Ferlito,
Yes.
Tice,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Potter.
Aye,
Right, it passes with 5 yes votes.
thank you, guys. So that then brings us to our only order of business, which is item number 10. Receive a presentation recommending the public agency for retirement system, aka PARS, as the preferred Section 115 retirement trust provider, and direct staff to prepare the authorizing resolution and other necessary documents to establish the Section 115 trust administered by the Public Agency Retirement Services, aka PARS. All right, Chip, would you like to tee this up before I hand it off to Sharon?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to start by thanking and congratulating the council. We talk about doing a lot in our little village, but you've had the wherewithal over the last couple of years of trying to move into a posture of long-term financial stability, and part of that is addressing our long-term unfunded pension liability. And so I wanted to thank you and congratulate you. You were steadfast when we adopted a relatively tight budget that you wanted to continue to winnow away at our UAL. And so we got direction from you a couple months ago. The item that you have before you, I think, addresses your direction, which is to proceed with one of the 2 firms that we received proposals from to manage a Section 115 trust. We did the interviews and the reference checks that you had requested. The punchline is that both Keenan and PARS are well suited to act as our trust administrator. We had great interviews, and we have Ms. Sanders here from PARS. She can answer any questions that I can't. We have our our financial advisors, Mr. Hill and Mr. Myers from NHA. They've been helping us for the last several years on financial matters, and we're real pleased that they've been our stewards. The item before you tonight is just to select a trust administrator. We will come back and we will talk about our posture, our tolerance, any of the portfolios that will ideally eventually be investing in. And I just wanted to reiterate to you again is that once we eventually sign the documents, and we're planning to come back to you in August with authorization, and then we'll go ahead and fund the trust, you have put money into it. It's irrevocable. So the money that we put into a Section 115 trust cannot be used for anything with the exception of pension liability or other post-employment benefits. So again, we've got our traditional pension payments. We have our OPEB, our bond that we've got a couple more payments on. You can choose in future years or this year to make a large principal pay down of our liability to CalPERS. So again, the options to you are still very, very numerous. And again, I think we'll get into that in the next and future meetings. So again, someone likened this to me today. It's kind of like setting up your retirement account tonight, and you're choosing between a couple of different investment firms to help you. So that's the decision point before you tonight. Again, we're happy to have a more robust discussion about whether we have the technical expertise among this greater team to make decisions about what kind of a portfolio we should invest in, or whether we need to get help from members of our community who have expertise in this area. And you all know that we've got a great number of those folks in our community. I wanted to thank Sharon again for doing the heavy lifting on this. She did a great job with our finance team. And I think she's gonna talk to you briefly, Mr. Mayor, before we transition to a decision-making part of the hearing.
Thank you, Chip. Sharon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. The city administrator really hit the highlights of what I wanted to speak to as well. I would just like to reiterate that council's had several meetings regarding cost containment and pension mitigation, such as establishing the trust, making additional payments to CalPERS to buy down the unfunded actuarial liability, the UAL, as well as possibly refinancing or reissuing bonds. Again, tonight's action doesn't take any of those options off the table. Rather, tonight is the first step, the logistics to facilitate this council being able to move forward with establishing a trust. Again, we've had proposals by 2 qualified firms. The city would be well served by either Keenan or PARS. Staff felt that PARS had a better alignment with our needs at this point in time due to the experience of the firm, the diversity of its portfolios, and really some of the customer service features, client support and advisory services, which is why we are recommending that council concur with staff in selecting PARS. As the city administrator mentioned, we would return next month with a resolution to formally enter into the trust participation agreement. Again, at this point in time, we're looking for here to answer any questions regarding the 2 proposals. Again, seeking direction and concurrence to move forward with PARS. And again, the decisions regarding the amount of funding to put in the trust, the timing of when to transfer those funds to the trust, the investment portfolio, and the use of the funds. As we know, it is restricted to pension, but it can be used at any time for additional payments or to buffer a bad economic year when the city is making its required payment to PERS and can seek reimbursement. So again, those are discussions that we will continue to have with council as we move forward. This is just, again, the first procedural logistical action to establish the trust. Thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sharon. Are there any questions to Chip or Sharon by council members? Carrie?
Yes. Thank you, Sharon, for providing this nice table one. The question I have is, I'm not familiar with what an IRS private letter ruling is. Could somebody please explain why PARS has both options for that, but Keenan does not have it for the pension, but it does have it for OPEB?
If I may, Sharon, we spoke with Mr. Meyer today, and he had a great explanation. Mike, can you reiterate what you shared with us today about the IRS letters no longer being required and the like, please?
Yeah, I may actually defer to Ms. Sanders, which I think is probably a common question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sure. No problem. Good evening, council members. Glad to be with you. So PARS did apply to the IRS for a private letter ruling, which basically what that does is gives you the assurance that any earnings that you get on assets within a 115 trust are tax exempt. So it's really just an added layer of security to the 115 trust. Now, PARS is only one of two providers that actually have the IRS private letter ruling for both pre-funding pension and OPEB. I know Keenan has it on OPEB. Interestingly enough, I know that Keenan and some other firms did apply to the IRS to get this private letter ruling, but I believe because they're backlogged, the IRS is just no longer issuing those. But this also isn't a revenue ruling, meaning it doesn't broadly apply to other firms. So I would say the biggest benefit that you have with PARS actually having that private letter ruling, again, is that you just have that assurance that those earnings that you may get on those assets are tax exempt.
Sure, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, are there any other questions before we go to the public? Questions? I don't see any. All right, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody in the public wishing to comment on this item tonight?
This is the time to use your device. For *6 will unmute your device. *9 will raise your hand if you're attending by phone. At the bottom of your screen, you can use the reactions tab to raise your hand, or simply unmute yourself and we will hear you. Mayor, I'm scrolling through the participants. I don't see any movement.
I'll take that as positive support from the public then. All right, is there anybody on the council wishing to comment? I guess I will comment, and I think we're incredibly fortunate as a community. It speaks really very well to this council. We're in a position where, coming out of this pandemic, we actually are in a position where we can invest $1 million. An unfunded liability that's been hanging out there forever. This can gets kicked down the road by so many other jurisdictions. But we in Carmel have been fortunate enough to be responsible with the public dollars, where we're now making an aggressive move forward, pay down that liability. I think it's really, really impressive. I'm very proud of us. We're able to do that. I don't want to toot our own horn too much. Nobody from the public wanted to say it, so I will. I'm damn proud of this town. All righty. How about it, Bobby?
Yeah, well said, Mayor. And I can't agree more. I'm so relieved that we finally moved ahead with this. I've been hoping for this for, I think, 4 years now. And so I'm just really happy that we're moving forward with it tonight.
Excellent. All right, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. I certainly agree with all of Dave's comments. I see that next month we're going to be working, staff is going to work with PARS to develop a IPS investment policy statement and a funding strategy. So I would just like to, repeat the comments that I've made, and I think all of the past meetings, just so that they're on the record. The state of California has regulations that severely limit the ability of cities to invest money that we have under our own control in risky investments. And I agree wholeheartedly with those restrictions, that the city should not be gambling with the money that our constituents have entrusted to us. And when I think about the range of investments that we are going to be using this money for, and I do wholeheartedly support putting this money aside, but when I think about the range of investments that we are going to be given the option to, in which we will be given the option to invest our money, stock market, equity markets, real estate markets, and markets that, to me, violate the spirit of the rules that the state of California has put in place for us to manage that money. And this seems a little bit, some of these investment options seem a little bit like a workaround, a workaround for us to reach for a higher return. And, in my mind, the fact is the returns right now are just pretty crappy, and we just have to sort of live with that. And we have to we should really avoid taking risk to try and make up ground that we've lost over the course of the past decades, because the ground that we've lost over the course of the past decades has been lost. There's nothing we can do as a community to make up that ground. So I will be looking for a very conservative investment strategy that we use for our money. And the second thing that I've expressed in the past is, I'm unsure as to whether we, and so Rachel, welcome to the family here, or I'm assuming you'll be welcome to the family in a minute. I'm just not sure that we as a city, I listened to Chip talk about community members, helping us be involved with investment decisions. And I'm just not sure that, we, even with the benefit of the community members, are really qualified to make sort of these decisions. And it really troubles me that we're going to be in this spot. I don't know whether Ms. Sanders is in a position to help us make those decisions, or whether Mr. Meyer is in a position to help us make those decisions or not. I'm unclear. At past meetings, we've had this conversation around CalPERS, and I've expressed my willingness to simply give some of our $1 million and future set-asides to CalPERS, because as much as we all sort of have this love-hate relationship with CalPERS, it is in fact CalPERS business to plan for the people that have retired from our service. And whether we like it or not, we are in the ocean that is CalPERS, and we cannot escape. And so I do believe that it is prudent, again, I'll say this again, I do believe that it is prudent to give some of our money, just pay off some of our unfunded actuarial liability and give it to CalPERS, rather than investing it on our own. So as you come back next month with recommendations to the council, I will be looking for those things. Thank you.
Appreciate that heads up, Jeff. And obviously that's something the next step will be. So is there anybody else wishing to comment before we have a motion? I don't see anybody. Is there anybody wishing to move this item? Otherwise, I'm prepared to, if you'd like. I would be prepared to move that we go ahead and authorize staff to go ahead and prepare the authorizing the resolution and other necessary documents to establish a Section 115 trust administered by the public agency Retirement Services. Motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then Britt, would you call the question, please?
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Ferlito? Sorry, you were muted.
Yes.
Tice?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
Yes.
Mayor Potter?
Aye.
All right, it passes with 5 yes votes.
All right, I think we had some discussion tonight about possible future agenda items. If anybody else with any item they'd like to put on the agenda or make a suggestion that we take a look at for tonight? Karen?
Well, we talked a little bit tonight. I think we have to have a discussion about addresses and mail delivery.
And we've had that discussion before, Karen, and we've agreed we're going to have that discussion.
Yes, and I'd also still like to, in the future, very near future, if possible, take a look at what we can do as far as a commercial district, downtown recovery, whatever you want to call it, overall plan of attack. So that we look at the entire picture and not just piecemeal things.
Karen, I'm sorry, I hate to be the one complaining, but since I've been accused of being a little short of voice myself, but your volume is not very good tonight.
Oh,
so.
I am so sorry. I will have to do something to try to fix that. I would like an overall plan of attack for revitalizing our commercial district that takes into consideration all of the things that work downtown, how our streets work, how our outdoor dining may be enhanced in the future, parking, an overall view so that we don't piecemeal things and get stuck.
All right, is there any other comments? Yes, I would just suggest that what I'm hearing tonight is a lot more work for the Planning Commission. perhaps it's time for the planning commission to return a little bit more to the planning world, a little less in the design review world. So I think that's something I'd like to have a discussion about, because I do agree with Karen. There's a lot of plans that need updating. We've got a lot of projects we're tasking with the planning commission with. They fall in the hand of planning, not so much under our architectural design review. I think that's something we should have a discussion about in the future. So that said, I'll make sure it's agendized immediately since I'm the mayor. No, I'm kidding you. Obviously, we'll try to do our best to get all these items forward. All right, that said, I'm going to call this meeting completed. It's now 8:45 my time. Janine and I race out the door here. I think we're going to be able to grab dinner somewhere in Hingham, perhaps at the Snug, our favorite tavern. They do serve till 10, but the food's kind of marginal, so we'll see. Anyway, guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for the participation. Thanks for the thoughts and all the concerns. Okay, we now stand adjourned. Thank you all.
All right, thanks, Mayor.
Ciao, guys.